Всем привет, my name is Vika. I'm very glad to see you on my channel, and today I'm going to answer your questions about my country, Russia. And here I'll talk mostly about my experience as I see like these situations that you've asked me about. So if you also live in Russia and you don't agree with me, feel free to write down in the comments your view on this question or situation, so people from all around the world may have a wider look on what's going on in our country. So yeah, I hope that you like this video, and I'll put all the timestamps down in the description box, and let's start. First question, do many Russians speak English? The simple answer is no. Most of Russians who speak English well live in Moscow or St. Petersburg, because there are a lot of tourists. There are all the central offices of international companies, and people who know English usually work there. English teaching in Russian schools is quite bad, so most amount of people know only basics or nothing at all. And all the people who I personally know who knows English well studied it in the university to be a translator or English teacher, or used to live abroad at least for some amount of time. I know that in Moscow there are much more people who just learned the language to get a better job, but I think there are not so many of them comparing to the population of Moscow, so not a lot of people know English here. How a person can most ethnically travel to Russia, how to experience some Russian culture. Usually I recommend everybody who comes to Russia the first time go to Moscow or St. Petersburg or both cities, because it's the easiest way to travel in Russia for tourists. There are a lot of interesting places, museums, and a lot of people speak English, so it's like basics. But the question was the most ethnical way, and if you want to experience something more like interesting and more deep into Russian culture, I really recommend taking a ticket to a Golden Ring of Russia trip. This trip is quite popular even among Russians. It unites several oldest Russian cities with a very rich history from ancient and medieval times. There are a lot of churches, Orthodox churches, very beautiful ones, monasteries, Kremlins, like a lot of places to see. And this is like a whole trip for several days around these cities. And there definitely are English guides for this trip, so you can check it out. I think it's a very interesting one. Interesting places that aren't popular. Usually all the interesting places that aren't popular are related to nature more, and are difficult to reach even for Russians, and of course even more difficult for foreigners, like Baikal, Kamchatka, Caucasus Mountains, like a lot of natural like places, and I can't really even recommend you to go there because it's very complicated and difficult. So as a tourist, you can really go to the Golden Ring of Russia. It's a popular one, but not a very typical trip, because most of the tourists just go to Moscow and St. Petersburg and don't see other places, so this one is very interesting. What should we avoid while traveling to Russia? I'd say you better avoid going to the edge of the city alone and staying there until the end of the day, till darkness, but I'm sure you won't do that. So of course you need rubles everywhere. You won't be able to pay with dollars or euros or any other money anywhere here, so you need rubles. And you better have a Google Translator with you everywhere you go, because I'm sure there will be places where people won't understand you, even in big cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg. But in general, I think Russia is quite tourist friendly, especially in big cities. There are a lot of things for tourists, so I'm sure you won't have any like serious problems. Do Russians need visas for Europe? Is traveling easy for Russians? Russians need visas for almost all well-developed countries, like European countries, USA, Canada, Australia. More than that, I would say that it's difficult to get visa to the USA here, probably because there are Russians who come to USA, try to stay there illegally. Right now, getting visa for this country is quite complicated. You need to prove that you have some things that will like make you come back to Russia, like real estate, good job, maybe you're studying in the university, or maybe you have your spouse or children staying here, so you need to somehow prove that you'll come back. And usually you need to make a good impression on the consul, so he would like you and just give you a visa. And I have several friends who didn't get their visas, although they paid for all the process, they made all the documents, they did everything, but they didn't got their visas, so and they weren't able to travel to the USA. But for other countries, like European countries, it's much easier. Usually people don't have such serious problems with visas as for USA. Still, anyway, a lot of Russians prefer to go to countries where we don't need visas, like Thailand, Turkey is very popular, Georgia. And the second problem that Russians face while trying to travel, besides visas, is the expensiveness of dollars and euros. For example, euro right now costs about 91 ruble and dollar is about 77 rubles, and it's quite a lot because the average Russian salary in my city is $500. So even if you find cheap tickets to Europe, which is pretty easy to find, you still need to pay there for for a hotel, for food, for all the museums and things like that. So you need to have a solid amount of euros, which are quite expensive for Russians. So traveling to Europe may be a little bit pricey. That's why also a lot of Russians prefer countries where it's a little bit cheaper. As I said, like Greece, Thailand, Turkey are very popular here. Although I know that among European countries, Italy and Germany are the most popular for Russian tourists. So I started to talk about money a little bit, and I decided to continue with different questions about money. So what does it cost to live in average a week or a month in Russia? Is it expensive? So as I said, average salary is about $500, and this is approximately the cost of living for a month. Usually if you have that salary, you are able to rent a small apartment somewhere in the city and have probably no savings after that, or you can live with somewhere else and split the rent and then maybe have some small savings. Usually people here save to buy a good phone, computer, for traveling, for education. As a family, people usually combine income and then think about buying their own apartment or house or take the mortgage, because for a single person it's very difficult to do. I can't say that life itself is expensive because, for example, rent is much cheaper than in Europe or in the USA, much cheaper. But food, for example, costs approximately the same as in Europe or just a little bit less. So the huge amount of our income goes to food. If you want to buy some foreign goods like an iPhone, Nike, I don't know what else is popular, foreign cars, some home appliances, that would be pricey for you because usually the cost of these things is a little bit more than abroad because of taxes and things like that. But salaries obviously are much lower than abroad, so it's difficult to purchase these things. Real estate is also much cheaper than abroad, but still, if you compare the price of real estate with salaries, it's still very complicated and just difficult to purchase it. The cost of Russian city life, the cost of rural life, and does that greatly affect the earning potential? Rural life is obviously much cheaper because people in villages usually have their own houses, so they don't pay for rent, and there are no entertainment in the villages, there are no cafes, cinemas, anything, so they don't spend any money on entertainment. and food is usually cheaper because it's locally made and people grow a lot of food themselves. But it's very difficult to find any job there, almost impossible. And even if you find a job, you'll get like $130 for it or something like that, very small amount of money. So and still you need to pay for your house, like to renovate it sometimes, and for your car, because you won't be able to live in the village without a car at all. So the earning potential is very low and it's very difficult to find any job there. The roads are usually very bad. Sometimes you won't have a mobile connection in villages, and you know, just nothing nothing is there. Like no internet, you need to drive for an hour to get to the city, and you know, everything is complicated. So people usually there are very poor, because everybody who can't do that usually moves to the city. But there always is an exception, and here exception is Krasnodarsky Krai. It's the south of Russia, and villages there are huge. Like there are tens, thousands of people living in these villages, which are called stanitsa. And obviously there is all the civilization. There are banks, there are shops, cinemas, cafes, schools, like anything you need. But still it's difficult to find a job there, because usually people work in the organizations that I just mentioned, and salary is still quite low. You'll get like $250, maybe a little bit more if you have a higher position in the organization. Okay, next, do people marry young? Usually, like an average, people get married between 25 years old and 32 years old, so I don't know if it is young or not. How do people treat pregnancy? Do women try to hide it? Were people more helpful? I think usually people don't really care. I mean, random people on the street, they don't care, they won't pay any attention to it, they maybe won't even notice that you are pregnant. Of course, your friends and relatives will be excited for you and happy for you, but not just random people. And usually women try to hide their pregnancy during the first trimester because of the high risk of miscarriages, and then share with everybody when she'll get into the second trimester. People on the streets and in public transport, they can be more helpful, especially it's common to give up your seat for a pregnant woman in a public transport. But quite often they don't notice or don't care, and you need to ask if you need help. Your friends and family usually are more careful for you and very often ask you if you need any help, so at least it was for me. Also, for the last several years, baby showers and gender parties became popular, because in the past we didn't have celebrations like that, and nowadays almost everybody wants to do this kind of celebration. Is breastfeeding popular in Russia, and do many moms breastfeed? According to statistics, less than 40% of moms breastfeed. I noticed that doctors usually tell you that breastfeeding is good, it's nice for your baby, but they won't insist you on breastfeeding if you don't want to. They don't care so much what you personally do. For example, when I was in the maternity hospital after giving birth, nurse helped me to hold the baby right, to breastfeed, and she showed me how to do that very quickly. And I've even heard that there is a breastfeeding specialist somewhere in the hospital, but I'm not sure about that, because my roommate once called the nurse and said that it seems for her that she doesn't have enough milk, and that breastfeeding is uncomfortable and hurtful for her, and nurse just gave her some formula and didn't call any breastfeeding specialist or anything like that, so I'm not sure if there were any. Yeah, so doctors say to you that it's good, but they won't care much about what you do, and they won't insist if you just want to feed differently, if you want to feed formula. And yes, we have roommates in the maternity hospital. I know that not in every country it is like that. After giving birth, there are usually, typically, about 6 people in one room with babies. Like big room with just beds and 6 people with babies. But you can pay some money if you want, and there will be just 2 of you. So that's what we did. We paid, and I was just with a roommate. And we had one shower and toilet for 2 rooms like that, so for 4 people and 4 babies. So that's how it works in the government hospitals here. Do you get any benefits during the time you're at home with Agatha? Yes, we actually have a lot of financial support and benefits for new parents, which is quite cool. If I had worked officially before giving birth, I would receive the same amount of money I was earning per month for 70 days before giving birth. It's where the maternity leave starts, 70 days before giving birth, and 70 days after giving birth, so 140 days I would get my full salary, or a little bit less depending on your salary. There are very complicated rules that count all of that. But I had work, but I hadn't worked officially, so I don't receive that. Anyway, when you give birth, you get paid about $235 for birth if you hadn't worked, or more if you had worked, and it also depends on your salary, so you receive that amount of money at once. Then everyone receive about $95 per month till the baby is 1.5 years, no matter if the mom worked or not before giving birth. And also, if you have a low income in your family, you can get about $145 per month extra till the baby is 3 years old. And we also have received $330 for 3 months of lockdown last year. And the maternity leave in Russia is officially till the baby is 3 years old. So you get paid for 140 days, but your average per day salary. But till 3 years old, you can stay at home with your child without losing your actual job. You can just come back after your job without any problems after the baby is 3 years old. So that's how it works here. How is daycare, and when children go to school, do moms in Russia go back to work? It's a little bit related to the previous question. Usually, like officially, daycare or kindergarten starts when the child is 3 years old. And because maternity leave is also till 3 years old, usually moms wait till that time and then go back to work. Some mom may hire a babysitter or find a private daycare for smaller kids and come back to work earlier than 3 years old. Some moms decide to not work at all anymore and just stay at home with their kids. 2 moms of young children have play groups in Russia where they take turns hosting. I've never heard about that here. Usually people don't do that. I don't know why. It seems like a nice idea. Usually people ask for their parents to take care of kids for some time, or their friends, or hire a babysitter if they want to spend time without a child. Is there any pressure for women to look a certain way when you go out or at work? Absolutely, and it's quite expected for women from the society around them to wear at least a little bit of makeup just to like freshen up your face, as people tell. To look neat, put together, stylish. Your clothes must be ironed because people take ironing very seriously in Russia. Your shoes must be clean always, although we have a terrible dirt on the streets in winter, in spring, and in autumn. Like, it's impossible to always have clean shoes, but somehow people try to do that all the time. At work, you also may be asked to look nice, and that means that you need to have some makeup, maybe do your nails in the salon, which also quite expected, and have like neat, nice looking hair, just in general look really nice. So also there are dress codes sometimes at work, and you need to follow that too. So yes, there definitely is a pressure, and if you don't do these things, people will really judge you, and they might tell you in your face that you look not very good, or they might judge you between themselves and won't tell you anything, but you may probably feel that they have like not very nice thoughts about you. So, and it seems to me that with every year it's getting more and more expected from women to take care of themselves in the salons, because I remember about 5-6 years ago almost nobody did their nails, like very small amount of people paid their nails, only more like wealthy ones. And right now everybody does that, and it seems to me that every year it's getting worse and worse. Although people look nice, like everybody is looking nice, and everybody tries to look beautiful and try to look the best they can, so maybe it's even a good thing, I don't really know. Do you see a rise of feminism in Russian society? I can't say that I see a rise of feminism in Russian society. I think the feminist movement is not so popular in Russia because, well, I think because in Soviet Union we had almost equal rights for men and women, and there weren't any pressure for women to stay at home with kids. Women also worked, and they got very high positions in the society. This feminist movement isn't so popular here, but I sometimes see some teenagers or young adults in their 20s who are more like aggressive feminists and who really fight and vote against domestic violence. For example, we have a huge problem with that, because we have no laws that would somehow stop that thing, against sexual harassment, for equal respect between men and women without stupid stereotypes, for equal like house chores, because still usually women do all the house chores here. So they kind of vote for equality in these spheres too. I can't say that it's very popular, it's not. But sometimes I see something like that, and we get more and more feminist books published every year, because I sometimes look at different bookshops and I noticed that feminist books becomes more popular here. Tell briefly about higher education in Russia. How do you get into university after finishing school? Do you have a national exam? And do you pay for education? What are universities like? Most amount of students finish school the same year they turn 18, and at the end of the 11th grade or at the end of the high school, you need to pass a national exam for different subjects. Subjects you usually choose yourself. It depends on what profession you want to study, and there are usually 3-4 subjects. Somebody can get more. For example, I needed English, Russian, and history to apply for being an English and German translator in the university. The exam is identical all over country, but it has different variants for each subject, so you won't get the same variants in one classroom, or at least kids that sit near in one classroom won't have the same variants. And everything about this exam is insanely strict. There are cameras everywhere. You pass it in a different school, so teachers won't know you and won't want to help you. You can't go out without a teacher to the toilet. There are a very small amount of people in each classroom, and before you enter it, the metal detector checks if you try to hide any phone, and you can't bring anything except pens and a couple pencils and maybe some water. It lasts for about 4 hours each exam. You pass it in different days, and it's crazily stressful Usually students get completely stressed out at the beginning of high school because everything that they do for the next 2 years is preparing for these finals and thinking about these finals, and usually teachers won't help you. They will only get this pressure more and more on you, so they always would tell you that you're not ready enough and things like that. So I hope that one day we will not have this type of exam anymore, because it gets worse and worse every year. Government makes it more difficult to pass it, and people start to vote against this exam, because every year there are some cases when students can't handle the pressure and commit suicide, which is very tragic. And so I hope that this exam won't exist one day. And I remember it like a nightmare, to be honest. After you pass everything, you will get some amount of exam points, and if you get enough of them, you may apply to the university. Usually kids who get the most amount of exam points may study for free, like some of them, and others need to pay for education. Usually it goes between 50,000 rubles to 500,000 rubles per year, depends on city and university. In big regional cities, it's usually about $1,300 per year, or like approximately like that. And in Moscow it's much more expensive. I don't really know what to tell you about the universities themselves, because in my experience, and as I know, in regional cities education is quite boring and outdated. It's better in Moscow and St. Petersburg, definitely, but in regions it's like that. It was a lot like in school. We had to come at 8 a.m, study till about 2 p.m, 5 days a week, and then we came back home to do our homework for the next day. So nothing really interesting. But we also had some activities in the university where you could take part in, like we had comedy and stand-up club, dancing club, some politics and discussions club, things like that, different activities that you can just join if you want. What of Russian history is taught in Russian schools, and is it taught in a positive or a negative way? I think all of Russian history is taught in Russian schools with its positive and negative moments. But when it comes to 20th century, I think usually we study more about positive moments, and more attention of students come to directs to positive moments like achievements of nation, technical progress, winning in the war, and things like that. And we study negative moments like repressions and bad government decisions, but not as deeply as we could, because there are a lot of information to dive deep in about these things. And we don't really study much about the late 90s and the beginning of 21st century. There is some information about that, but not a lot. And I think I may be wrong, but I think it's quite the same in every country. Usually people study everything, but not very deeply into ugly moments, and try to pay attention more to positive things. How is the healthcare and insurance systems? Government provides free healthcare for all the citizens, no matter if they work or not, just for everybody. It is almost free because we actually pay taxes for it, but usually nobody remembers about it because you don't have to pay directly to the hospital and taxes are not so big. It's good to have a free healthcare, but the quality of it sometimes isn't very good. Healthcare centers are often in bad condition. And the worst thing about this healthcare system is that doctors are quite often rude and impolite and don't care much about you and about your problems. And I think this is the last thing that you want to deal with when you have health problems or when your child has health problems. So yeah, this whole experience with government healthcare, hospitals, can be quite stressful, and I hate going to these places. It was the worst during my pregnancy because I had to go there a couple times a week for all the appointments, for all the analysis, and I hated it every time. So because I have to wait in line for hour and a half almost every time, and not all the doctors were polite, and sometimes the help wasn't very qualified, and sometimes they were telling me things that even I knew are not like right according to health care. So it's a little bit complicated. We have private medical centers where you can just come, pay for an appointment, and it would be quite nice. Inside, people would be much more polite because you pay for their job. And I really like going to these centers. I prefer not to buy extra t-shirt but to spend my money on our healthcare because I just don't like government hospitals. We have insurance system, but I don't know anybody who would actually purchase insurance and use it. It's sometimes provided by work if you have a higher position in your company, and it's not very popular here to have an insurance, to health insurance. Usually people just come to private health centers if they want and pay for every appointment separately. And we also have insurances for cars. This one almost everybody has. For houses and for life, these ones are not as popular, but some people also purchase them. How does the COVID pandemic affect in your daily life? Are people following public health norms? So after 3 months of lockdown, everything started to slowly come back to normal, and I think almost everything we're already working in autumn, and right now I think everything works, all the schools, universities, all the shops, everything you need, and it feels like the normal life again. Already, although there are still a lot of people who are sick and people are getting sick, but government decided that there are no reasons for lockdown anymore. Some people obviously lost their jobs last year, and if they worked officially and if they actually could prove that they lost their job because of pandemic, they could apply for the financial unemployment benefit from the government. Also, people with kids received some amount of financial support easily, and I think the worst situation was with businesses, because as I know, we had almost no support for businesses that had hard times during the lockdown, and I know that taxes were delayed for some period of time, but I didn't hear about any real financial support for companies. So a lot of small businesses were closed because they couldn't work, and they didn't have money to pay rent, and things were quite sad. It is recommended for people to wear masks, but people here hardly follow any norms and requirements. So people that work in hospitals, in shops, in supermarkets are required to wear masks, and they usually do that. But people who just walk on the street, they don't wear masks. And sometimes people get asked in the shops or supermarkets to put on the mask, and they do that. And also we have our vaccine ready, and government tries to make everybody go through vaccination, but it's a little bit difficult because people don't really trust government healthcare very much, so people don't go just by themselves to get vaccinated. Well, some do, but most of people just don't want to go. How contented do you think Russians are with their way of life? I've seen that some people didn't like that question in the comments, but I still decided to answer it. Well, in my experience, many people complain a lot about the government, about healthcare, about prices, about salaries, about everything. So I don't think that in general people are very contented. Most of young people that I know want to move abroad, would like to move abroad, and most of them search for different ways to do that. Wealthy people are usually quite fine and are happy with what they have. So in general, I think most amount of people is not very contented. Top few snacks, sweets, drinks that you'd recommend to try in a Russian store. Okay, Тульский пряник, sweets like halva in chocolate, птичье молоко, any chocolate sweets like these, maybe Alyonka also, these are quite tasty. I'm not very much into drinks, but you can try Buratina lemonade. It's a classic one from the Soviet Union, so it's have been popular in Russia for decades. Do people in Russia drink vodka all the time, or it's just a stereotype? It's a stereotype. Vodka is a very heavy drink, and it was a little bit popular among men in the Soviet Union. So right now people who are older 50 years old, usually men, like to drink vodka on some celebrations or just with friends. It is a little bit popular at this age. Also very like low class and poor people have often addictions to vodka because it's cheaper than other alcohol and it's very like heavy. You get drunk quite fast, so people have really bad addictions to it. In the villages also, because there is nothing to do there and people don't know what to do else and they just drink it, and there are huge problems with the vodka addictions. But in general, in cities, among people who have like average salaries, it's not, or higher, it's not so popular. I know nobody like among my friends or acquaintances who would really drink it, but you should keep in mind that I don't know anybody who would party a lot and get drunk on these parties often, so maybe people like that also like vodka, I don't know. My friends who drink alcohol usually drink wine, champagne, whiskey or something like that, and vodka is not very popular among them. But all the Russians like to make jokes about vodka for foreigners, because we know that it's a very popular stereotypes and foreigners usually like jokes about it. What Russians' view of Americans is there an unspoken hostility? Okay, American friends, don't get offended or upset about my answer, because I'll talk not about my opinion but about stereotypes that we have in our country. So people who are older than 50 years old approximately usually have quite a negative attitude towards America and Americans. Mostly because they watch TV all the time, they have been watching it for the last several decades, and there is nothing on our TV but propaganda and lies and like real brainwashing that America is bad. So these people usually have quite a negative attitude since the Soviet Union, and it's some sort of a part of their culture of this older generation. But when it comes to young people who don't watch TV, who don't trust our government and the propaganda, who travel a lot, who use the internet a lot, so like most of young people, they have a very friendly attitude towards Americans and America, and actually think that America is a nice place to live in and that Americans are cool. So it really depends on the person, on his background, on his like friends and acquaintances, what he's doing in his free time, what the education is. It really depends. And I think it's okay, we all are different, and I'm sure that in America there are a lot of people who don't like Russia and Russians also, and that's fine, like everybody has the right to have their own opinion. So I have a lot of American friends and I think that they are great people. Do you feel that old communism from Soviet Union still have any influence on the way you live today? I think that the way we live today is fully formed and shaped by the Soviet Union period of time. And although a lot of things have changed and a lot of things are different now, still the Soviet Union influence is everywhere. What we eat, where we live, how people think, what they learn in schools and universities, it's everywhere. Not exactly like communism itself, but the Soviet Union vibe in general. It's getting better every year because new things come to our country, new opportunities, people travel, people learn new things. So yeah, it's getting better and people change, and the environment also is changing with time, but still there's a lot of influence of the Soviet Union. What do you and people in general do for fun in Russia? Hobbies, sports, entertainment? I think it isn't very different from other countries. A lot of people watch TV, watch movies, read books, listen to music, hang out in the city, go to the park, I don't know, go to cafes, cinemas, restaurants, museums, concerts. People go to yoga, people go jogging in the park. In winter, people go ice skating or skiing in the park. In the summer, a lot of people play outside in the park, also games like volleyball, table tennis, big tennis, football. We have small beach in the park on the lake, so people sometimes play beach volleyball. Go with children to some activity centers, hang out with them on the playground, in the park. Things like that. What is it like being a Christian in Russia? Tell about religion in general. Russia is very much an Orthodox country, and although we have it written in our constitution that you can believe in whatever you want and that Russia itself is a secular country, it isn't quite true, because from the ancient times till now, Orthodox Church was the main church, the main religion in Russia, and till the Soviet Union it had a lot of power and it could even disagree and somehow control government decisions. So in the Soviet Union there were a lot of repressions, but now church came back and is getting its power back. Government supports Orthodox Church a lot, and almost about 75% of Russian people consider themselves Orthodox right now. We have Orthodox churches all around our cities. They are very big, very beautiful, and they look really nice. We have special lessons in all the schools that are called History of an Orthodox Culture, and we don't have lessons dedicated to other religions, so kind of a little bit discrimination is happening here. Also, if you want to study theology in the regional university, there is usually only Orthodox theology. In Moscow and St. Petersburg there are different variants, but in regions there are usually only one. We have the law that says that you can't say offensive things towards a believer about his faith, but it usually works only with Orthodox people only. So yeah, you kind of got the picture. We have Muslims here as well, about 5% of the population, but they live mostly near Caucasus Mountains and in Tatarstan Republic, because these regions are historically more Muslim regions, so most amount of Muslims live in these areas. Usually people, Orthodox people and other people, are quite respectful towards Muslims and towards Islam in general. Also we have Catholics here, but very small amount of them, only 1%. And we have Catholic churches. Even in my city there is a Catholic church, but I personally don't know anybody who would be Catholic because there's a very small amount of them. People are usually also quite respectful. They're surprised to find out that you're Catholic, but quite respectful towards this religion too. Also about 1% of Buddhists. Usually these are people who used to travel to more Buddhist countries and who take care a lot about their health, about their mental health. So usually you are not surprised that a particular person is a Buddhist, because you can kind of see from the outside. So people are also quite respectful. They are interested usually. They don't have any problems with you being Buddhist. The most amount of problems and pressure comes to Protestant Christians and Judaists. And I don't want to complain here. I'm just telling you how things are going from my perspective, from my experience, and from the things I've heard about and I've seen. So people in Russia don't, like most of people, don't really distinguish Protestant Christians and Judaists, so they think that it's all some sort of the same Protestant thing. And since the Soviet Union there was a huge propaganda against Protestant Christians, and still nowadays people are very ignorant and think that Protestant Christians are all, no matter like what kind of Protestant Christians we're talking here about, they think that are all some sort of sect. I hope I said it right. So yeah, and Orthodox Church is against Protestant Christians most of the times too, and so you can understand when 75% of population is Orthodox Christians, then Protestants would have some problems. And if you try to explain people that there are actually three biggest Christian religions in the world, like Orthodox, Catholicism, and Protestantism, they don't listen to you. They think that you are just a weird sectarian and that you are telling some crazy stuff to them. So yeah, the biggest problem is people's ignorance about the world around and just about the Protestant Christianity itself. Also, government doesn't help in this situation at all, because we don't have any repressions against Protestant Christians, because, as I said, in our constitution it's written that you can be any faith you want to. But still we really feel some pressure. For example, we have the law that says that you can't evangelize just on the streets or anywhere else without a special document, and to get this document you usually need to be somebody in the church, like a priest or a documented missionary or somebody like that. So you can't just go and evangelize, because you may, not always, but you may have some troubles. So Christians are aware about that law and try to be very careful in case, just not to get into trouble. Also, we had a lot of American missionaries on the south where I used to live, and in 1 year they all had to move away back to America or to Moscow and St. Petersburg, because there are a lot of pressure on them from the government. And even a couple of times there were news on the TV about these Americans full of just propaganda and lies, crazy news that these Americans are spies and they found a sect and they want teenagers to believe them and they want to get money from teenagers, like some weird, just crazy stuff. We saw this news and we were like, who even like filmed this? Why people do that? Also, we have a Christian university on the south in Krasnodar too, because on the south there are very big Christian Protestant Christian churches. They're big in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, and on the south. In other parts of Russia they're not so big, so we have a Christian university there. And every year this university struggles to get its license, to prove that it has all the rights to have this license, to prove that it owns the land, the building. So every year we pray for this university, and it has to prove in court that everything is fine, and it's always quite stressful for people who work there and for people who study there also. So yeah, you kind of got the picture. But in general, if you just come and go to the church, if you don't get deeply involved into the church life, if your relatives are not against you're going to the church, because it's a huge problem for some people that their relatives are just crazily against it. If you just come and go, you won't have any problems. You can post on your Instagram account that you're a Christian, and you can post like Bible quotes. You can do anything you want, but if you're involved in the things where you are responsible, like university life, the ruling of the church, if you're a priest or something like that, you may have troubles and things that you will really need to pray for. What do you love about Russia that you wish other countries would have? I think a lot of countries have like these things, but anyway, I love how big Russia is, that there are absolutely different parts of nature with different climates, different little nations that all have their own like small cultures, and that is very interesting to me. I would love to travel all around Russia. I love our rich history from the ancient times. I love our like rich culture with a lot of information that you can get about it. I love our food, probably because I'm very used to it. I even like that Russia seems like sort of mysterious country for people who live abroad, because it was closed for such a long time and people don't know a lot about it, so it's kind of funny and interesting too. What prejudice about Russia do you enjoy the most, do you laugh about the most, and like favorite, least favorite thing? I think I have two favorite ones. First one is that stereotype that Russians always do some crazy stuff, like burn something, explode something, hug with bears, swim in the ice, you know, there are a lot of memes like that in the internet. And people do things like that, but it's not like we're doing that all the time. Most amount of people don't do these things on a regular basis, at least. Also, second favorite one is about emotions, that Russians don't have any emotions. I always love so hard about memes and jokes on the internet where some crazy stuff is going on and Russians just look like that. People have emotions here and they can express them quite loudly, I would say. My least favorite one is probably about vodka, that Russian people drink it all the time, maybe because I have strongly negative prejudices about this drink myself, so probably because of that. How does it feel when people bring up the Soviet Union or other parts of Russian past? Being apolitical. I think I said in one of the videos that I'm a little bit apolitical and somebody asked me this question. I don't really like when people start talking about Soviet Union times like it was a very good time, because some people here tend to do that, and I understand why they do that. But these people usually don't really know Soviet Union history well, and they just remember their childhood or their youth, and youth and childhood are always, you know, like these cute memories. So in these moments I really want to disagree with these people, and I don't like personally these types of political discussions. So most of the times I just avoid conversations like that. The last question, guys, isn't it a problem that you are making those videos and showing your country the way you like? I don't think there can be any problems about it. We have the law that says that you can't say offensive things about government, and some people have troubles because of posting something on the internet very offensive about government, but I never say offensive things about government here or in real life. I usually am quite neutral. I can say that something is not very good in our like regular life, but not about the government itself. And our opposition movement that is on the rise right now is all concentrated on YouTube and its leaders have big YouTube channels, and they always say offensive things about government. Comparing to their content, my videos are just like an innocent child. So nobody would ever care about me making videos like that. But thank you for caring about my safety. I really appreciate it. So these were all the questions, guys. Thank you a lot for joining this conversation, for asking questions, for listening to my answers. I hope you really liked the video. I tried to answer as many questions as I could, and I hope that you got answers to everything that you was interested in. Thank you again, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye.